Mr. Zuckerberg, welcome to the Financial Services Committee. Criticism is cheap. Anybody can criticize. As you can see here today, politicians in Washington are pretty good at lodging criticism, but creating something of value is significantly more difficult. And I would commend you for being an innovator and trying to create something of value. It seems like in Washington, whenever the private sector produces some type of innovation or new advancement, politicians and bureaucrats rush in to criticize or regulate. In an era when some politicians in Washington and even some politicians on this committee are openly embracing socialism and central planning, it seems like the presumption is always that private sector innovation is a bad thing. I think that presumption should be reversed. We in Congress should view innovation for its potential opportunities in promoting financial inclusion, reducing friction in transactions, aiding small business, and bringing the financial system to unbanked and underbanked communities. That's not to say we shouldn't ask questions, which is of course what we're doing here today. But in America, a country built on free enterprise and capitalism, it's always better to be on the side of innovation, and we should always place the burden on the government to justify regulation and intervention. Now, I was very interested in your testimony, Mr. Zuckerberg, when you alluded to the risks of not innovating and the danger of the U.S. falling behind some other countries or foreign companies who are creating similar platforms. Will you elaborate on the initiatives in those other countries?
Yes, Congressman. Thanks for the opportunity. Today, as soon as we put out this white paper on Libra, what we saw was, in China especially, they immediately kicked off this public-private partnership with some of their biggest companies in order to race to try to build a system like this quickly, a digital renminbi that they could use as part of their Belt and Road initiative, their kind of foreign and economic policy to grow influence throughout Asia and Africa and other areas. And they're planning on launching this in the next few months.
Well, I would say, when I think AML-BSA issues is important when we're talking about Libra and Calibra, but I think the American competitiveness angle and the competition with China is a national security issue, and the fact that Facebook and the Libra Association is launching into innovation, I think, is positive for our national security. Mr. Zuckerberg, I do want to commend you on statements you made recently at Georgetown University about free speech and the First Amendment. I was particularly happy to hear you say that you will, quote, continue to stand for free expression, understanding its messiness, but believing that the long journey towards greater progress requires confronting ideas that challenge us. I'm reminded of what John Stuart Mill wrote on liberty, and I would commend it to my colleagues and my friend, the chairwoman. Mr. Mill wrote that, quote, if all mankind minus one were of one opinion, and only one person of the contrary opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he, if he had the power, would be justified in silencing mankind. And this sentiment is important and relevant to Facebook, especially in today's age of political correctness, accusations of offensive speech, safe places, and the dramatic polarization of our political discourse. I do find it highly troubling that politicians are trying to bully you to be a fact checker and to be the speech police, especially in politics, at the core of the First Amendment. And so along those lines, I want to ask you a question about censorship and whatever fact-checking board you're delegating these responsibilities to. Will you commit that Facebook will not censor any political ad placed on your platform or in support of President Donald Trump?
Congressman, my commitment on this is that, or the principle at least here, is that we believe that people should be able to see for themselves what politicians are saying. That doesn't just go for Trump, that goes for any of the candidates for any of our national offices. People need to be able to see for themselves and be able to make judgments on what the candidates are saying and their character.
Well, I applaud you for that. And I don't want you to be bullied by politicians to relinquish our treasured free speech under the First Amendment. Protect it. And don't be bullied by politicians who want to censor politically incorrect speech. I yield back.